Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for parents going through the teenage years where no question is a bad question. I'm Rachel Richards, journalist, parenting coach, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist and musician and mother of 3... Oh, hang on. I'm going to have to redo that.
Just go for it. 3
young people. Hello, I'm Susie Asley. I'm mindfulness coach, mindful therapist and musician and mother of 3 young people. 2 of them are teenagers and 1 of them is 20.
I know. We really have. You're going to have to get that script down, aren't you? Get that kind of...
Yeah. You've been saying
Time marches
3
on.
Teenagers for years.
Time marches on, yes. And do you remember talking about the identity formation episode?
I do, yes.
So your identity is as the mother of 3 teenagers, but it's not.
How am I going to live? How am I going to get home?
Yeah, so the identity formation one was in October 2022. You don't have to go back to it because we are going to revisit the whole thing, aren't we? So it's now 2.5 years on from that, and I think it's a really good time to talk about identity again. I read an excellent book a year or so ago called Inventing Ourselves, The Secret Life of the Teenage Brain by Sarah Jane Blakemore, who's a leading cognitive neuroscience, and she writes really well. Her position is that identity formation is the job of adolescence. And I like that. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it, before I started the podcast. But so what I'm going to do is include a large clip of the original chat because there were some great points. I think we were great, weren't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, I went back thinking, this is going to be really cringe because we weren't doing it for very long. And I thought, I'll make some quite good points. We both do.
Who was that? I need to write that down. Oh,
yeah. No, I don't do that anymore. That's a good idea.
There was a lot of research in it, so I don't want to lose that. And then I thought we could talk about how we've seen our own kids' identities grow and shift.
Yes.
Because I think it'll help parents who are both at the start of the journey and later on.
Yeah.
So let's start with nuggets. Do you have one?
Yeah, I do. So mine's a bit more soul searchy today. It's to do with control. So this idea of letting go. So I have one particular kid who is quite disorganized and quite time management challenged. And we've had various discussions, some of them positive, some of them less positive. And it's quite challenging. We're working through it. But this whole concept of letting go, which I absolutely 100% adhere to and found actually quite easy when they were younger teens and was looking around going, why does everyone find this so hard? And now I'm going, and I realised that I'm actually, by not wanting to let go, and I do let go in lots of ways, but there's some bits where I go, is I'm trying to actually control the present moment because I'm trying to actually control the future.
Interesting.
And I'm trying to control the future because not because I want the future to look a particular way, but I'm concerned that whether I can cope with a fallout or my child can cope with a fallout.
Yes.
So it's not so much the event, it's can we cope with a potential event? So I kind of try and cling on to keeping the present moment as it is so that the future is also okay, so that then the fallout doesn't happen and maybe we don't have to go there.
Fascinating.
And I was like, yikes.
Yeah,
that's
very insightful.
Really helpful.
It's really helpful, and it's helpful for me because I've got one of those too, but also something that's happened recently, which isn't my nugget, but when I've been talking to my daughter, I've realised when I keep going back over these, why are you doing this right now? Because the habits you're forming right now will stay with you for your life. And she says, well, that's rubbish. I'm going to change. And I said, when are you going to change? When does that happen? And she said, when I go to work. And I said to her, but you know what? When you go to work, you're so overwhelmed with having to learn new skills. You're going to fall back on whatever habits you have.
Yeah.
And she said, no, well, what do you...
That's annoying.
It had never occurred to her. And I said, I'm not trying to make your life boring and anything right now. And I really understand that being tidy is not a priority for you. But I want you to understand that the habits you form will be the things you have to fall back on. And if you haven't got good habits, it's really hard. I know because I grew up in chaos and I spent my entire adult life slowly inching forward, learning new habits.
Yes.
And it's that's why I do New Year's resolutions every year, because I think, now what can I fix?
Yeah.
And it's not fixing as in there's something wrong with me. It's like, how can I make my life easier? Because this is really still hard.
Yeah. And then communicate. So my nugget is related to that, isn't it? So communicating that is how much do we do that and nudge and go, but I know this is important. And how much do we go let go, because now it's your job and I have to let go, otherwise we'll all go insane. And what I'm as I've just explained is doing is trying to control the future as well, so I don't because I'm worried subconscious whether I can cope with that fallout or whether he can cope or she can cope with that fallout. And I think the antidote for me, which is what I'm practicing at the moment, is trust.
I love it.
So trust it will be okay. I don't know what that looks like. So, the classic take care of the process and let go of the outcome.
But don't you think it's a bit of a dance? So you do that for a while and then you have to go back in again and ask questions. And I'm always sort of front-footing the questions like, why are you doing this? And then she'll tell me something and I go, oh, okay, it's you think this and what you're thinking isn't necessarily correct.
Yes, totally.
But you have to ease off and have all the fun and do the other things and then every now and then go back in again. So I know.
Or it can work out in a less healthy way, which I do sometimes. Like, I've let go. Yeah, it's all yours. It's all yours. And then but no, what about that?
And they're screaming up the stairs and they're and you've fallen over something on the landing that they've left. So you're like,
it's
totally
process.
get that.
But it's interesting one. That
I love that you shared
fear
that
aspect.
And I'm sure we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
Mine came up in a car conversation with my daughter, and it was about students using AI to complete essays and tasks that were set for them. And it was such an interesting thing because she doesn't. And this is the one who has a place at Oxford. So she's clearly worked really hard on, going, I don't know, she works really, really hard on her essays and things. And I just said, what's interesting is I feel like when people do that, because I know a lot of kids do that, and I said, the problem is that they're missing the point about the essay, because the essay isn't set by the teacher to give them something to do and to give them something to mark. Because you could say, well, that's just so I can get the grade so I can pass. It's actually there to help you build the skills and practice them. Yeah. Right. And it's like getting AI to do your gym workout. And you're not going to get any muscles. I know, I was thinking that. It's funny, when I said that, she looked at me and I went, I know, I wish. There will come a day. There will come a day, right, where you can plug it in and your body goes poof.
Amazing, can't wait.
Oh, I've only. But you see my point. So my point is that it's really interesting that the kids who are doing that, the only problem is that they're not actually getting the benefit from so are we wasting our time completely? Like, what's the point? And because also AI is moving so quickly that by the time the kids actually go, because you say, well, I'm learning for the workplace, but by the time you get into the workplace, it will all have changed anyway. Well, particularly with my kids, because they're not anywhere near there yet. And actually, I would imagine you can probably do some quick courses and you're good with AI, right? In the same way that you don't have to teach a 3-year-old how to swipe on a, they can navigate this stuff. So I was just like, we need to actually stick with the skills and building the memory and all those things, which is boring and hard work, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with that.
Anyway, back to that. I want the chip that I can stick in for the gym workout.
Absolutely.
Anyway. Do you have a review?
I do. Finally, I found someone who understands and talks sense. I think they're talking about you, Rachel.
Hardly.
Hi, I've just recently found you and I just want to say thank you. We've chatted through messages and voice notes, and what I learn in here from my boys will also help my 10-year-old girl as she grows. So thank you. Review left in episode 8, How to Parent Complex Kids with ADHD or Other Differences.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, gosh, I learned so much from that interview and that book. When I read that book, I really, and I'm still using it now. And the big thing is just holding a vision of your child in your head of something that they can be until they can own it themselves. And it's really just keeping faith. Mine is from Claire via an email on the website. I love listening to your podcast on my way home from work. You have managed to completely change my mindset from dreading the teen years ahead of me to actually seeing them as something to embrace and enjoy. I no longer jump into the defensive or protective mode every time a problem arises, but take a step back and try to encourage my teens to solve their own problems. This has already completely transformed my relationship with them. How wonderful.
Amazing.
And it ultimately is really having a positive impact on them and their maturity and transformation into becoming amazing adults. Thank you so much. This is the bread and butter, isn't it? It's just the communication, the ability to step back and not get too emotionally upset about it. Right. Now we'll go to the old episode and we'll talk about identity, and then we'll come back.
They're trying on different identities because that's what they're doing. They're finding out who they are, and that's completely normal.
Yes.
And I think it's our reaction to that can be the problem.
Yes.
As in many things.
And they're trying, it's that they've started to understand that they have different social roles.
Yes.
You talked last time when we were talking about the empty nest syndrome. When I mentioned, the roles that we play in life, and you said, well, you could go deeper than that. So what are your values?
Yes.
And it's about how we can talk to our teenagers about not simply their roles.
Yes.
Because I think we'll come into this role thing, because
they're important too.
Actually roles they can confine you. So once you say, I'm this, then what you're sort of saying is you're not all those other things.
Yeah. I mean, it's yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a kind of a complicated thing, really, in that, I mean, I think our identity is who we are when we're not the roles that we've been given. So we can take them as well. But, we're a daughter, we're a son, we're a brother, a sister, we're a school child, we're a, whatever, we're a hockey team member, and they're really important, and they really contribute to our whole identity, but they're not who we are. So who we are is when we are just ourselves. What are you like inside? And that's, of course, a work in progress. We look at that our entire lives, but the teenage years are probably where we're exploring it the most, because we're suddenly become aware of all these different facets and all these different social, like you said, social settings that we have, and we are confronted with, well, who the heck am I then?
And I think that's very, very difficult for teenagers if it goes unacknowledged.
Yeah.
If they start feeling this discomfort with who they might be.
Yeah.
They're trying to find something that makes them feel comfortable about themselves, but they don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, if they don't first have that internal feeling of safety inside of kind of like, at the age of 40, 50, you don't know who you are exactly, but maybe a kind of inkling that I'm okay. It's connected to self-worth, that I'm okay as me. I'm all right. I know who I am. I know what my values are. Maybe not specifically and verbally, because we're teenagers. It's hard. It's kind of quite abstract. But there's a sense of being able to be with yourself in a safe, comfortable way. I think that's the first step. And then if we don't have that, then the roles that we put on, or the identities we take, they are sort of scrabbling around for a feeling of safety. We want to belong. Where do we belong? How do we know? And that can be quite tricky, but it's also normal. It's also normal.
It's very normal. It's a process that all teens need to go through. But I love what you said about that sense of self-worth, because I think that's a role we can play as parents. It's easy for us to get panicked and worried about who our teenagers are or who they're becoming, but we need to constantly come back to, are we filling them with a sense of self-worth? Are they aware that they're loved and they're decent people underneath whatever it is they're displaying on the outside? Yeah,
and then the identities they pick, they're just like putting on hats then, aren't they? Because then they can put them on, take them off.
Yes.
Because their inner sense of worth isn't being rocked each time.
Yes.
But I think we also have to be careful. We touched on this quite a few episodes ago about giving our kids identities. And we do that often from the best place. Maybe it's banter in the family, or we're desperate to find something that they can do, their thing. I think we talked about it ages ago. Oh great, you're the netballer, you're the pianist, you're the academic one, you're the funny one, you're the showman, and we love that sort of categorizing, and it makes us feel a bit safer.
and they feel noticed.
Yeah, it's nice. There's a nice, but it can become a problem when they then
a cage.
Feel a cage. Yeah, when they feel, well, I don't want to be the academic one today. I don't want to be the showman. Actually, I've got a stinking headache, and I don't want to be funny.
Or, for example, where this happened later in life for him, but Bear Grylls, who I was listening to recently, who's the chief scout for the whole of the world. and he broke his back.
Yeah.
And he was an outdoor adventurer, and he lay in the bed having an existential crisis, thinking, wait, if I'm not those things, who am I?
Who am I? Yeah.
And this is inevitable, obviously, because we all are made up of the various different roles we play in life.
Yeah.
But right at the core of that is, what are my values and what matters to me, and how do I feel about myself?
Yeah.
And those roles can trap you.
Yes.
If one day you break your leg and then suddenly you're not that person anymore.
My eldest was, really good at playing music. And he was very explicit. He said, I don't want to be the music boy. I don't want that. I don't want that label. And he had, other external things going on, but he ended up stopping because he didn't want that label. He didn't want to be, conforming to that label.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Les Parrott, who's a professor of psychology, developed these 5 common ways in which teens demonstrate struggles with identity. Seeking status symbols. So, looking for clothes and possessions that give them a sense of positive affiliation. And we know that this is very common for teenagers. It's very normal, but it can be extreme. Forbidden grown-up behaviors, because that makes them feel that they can then be accepted by others because they think that by appearing mature that they are something other than perhaps what they are. Rebellion. Many teens use rebellion as a way to show that they're different from their parents and then to be accepted by their peers. Idols. Some identify specifically with one person. We've all had somebody on our wall. And then cliques, forming an identity which becomes the clique. So they are nothing without the clique.
Yeah.
So I've told my girls to act like a magpie, look around them and the things they find attractive. There's a reason you find them attractive. There might be things that you don't have yet in terms of personal traits or whatever it is. Explore it. Don't think, that if you're attracted to somebody, they used to call it pash, where the girls would be attracted to another girl who was older than them. And it was more that they were fascinated by somebody else, and it could be another boy, another girl, anybody, but let them explore that. It doesn't mean anything in particular. It means that they are curious and they're trying to experiment, they're trying to explore their identity, and it's a good thing. So I think we parents panic and think, they're showing signs they're going to do this.
Yes.
No, they're just trying things out.
Yeah. And the more nonchalant we can be about them changing, and the more that's a normal thing. Oh, you're this week and you're that next week. And okay, great, go for it. Have fun with that. Instead of, reacting and going, oh my God, what now kind of thing.
Yes.
Then the less they have to rebel and the more they can have fun with it, because it is really an interesting time for them.
And I have noticed that with all my kids, I have coached them without really knowing it about their identities. And, for example, one of them said once, I think I'm seen like this and I don't really want to be seen like that. What do I do? And I said, well, you could represent yourself to the world. So, we're now living in an era of social media, and that reflects back on us, who we are. And so I said, well, you can either try different clothes out to signal to people that you're different from the person that they might have thought you are. You can present different images on social media about yourself. This is all about trying on different hats and signaling to other people that you are not stuck in that particular role. But it's also about how she sees herself.
Yes, that's the key, isn't it? And it's this kind of like, there's almost 2 parts to it, isn't there? There's the internal identity that we talked about before. How do you feel inside? Do you feel good? Do you feel comfortable in your own skin? And then there's the external identity, which is the, what you're talking about now, you trying on different hats. So what do you want to present outwards? But if you don't feel safe in your own skin, then it's hard to try on hats without it being problematic.
Yes, because if you don't actually have a fixed identity of any type, then every time, for example, if you spend time with other people, then you will try and become that other person. So there's a classic. I remember girlfriends who would start dating some boy and suddenly their favorite hobby was hockey, and they'd buy everything, or they'd suddenly, then now they're windsurfing and they're trying it out, which is great,
which is fine,
but they'd suddenly their new identity was entirely this, and then the relationship would end and suddenly you go, so how's the surfing? And they go, oh no, I'm not. I do that.
But we can give our kids identities with the best will in the world, can't we? And I've been aware of doing it myself, and I've thought I was quite aware of not doing it. But my youngest boy is really sociable. He loves hanging out with his mates. And so we've started to call him Party Boy in the house, just, from just a nice little nickname. And he thinks it's funny. And then I was suddenly aware, like, oh, I'm not sure that's a great name, because, what if he doesn't want to be Party Boy? Or what if he's, wants to stay home? Does he then feel, I'm sure he doesn't read much into it, but it's just this idea that we can give labels without even realizing we're doing it, and just being aware that, it's fine to do it, but it doesn't, you can take it away as well.
And so much of it is about other people's expectations. And I remember going to university, and I was so excited about getting to university. I was the party girl. Everyone was coming back to my room, and it was just great fun. Yeah. And I became known as that person. Yeah. So for the first 2 terms, that was my identity. Yeah. And then I thought, actually, I don't want to be this person. I just exhausting. I can't fit that role. And my other daughters experience this too. Yeah. And suddenly you're not the person that they think you should be, and you get punished for it. And so it's about being brave enough to say, you know what, I'm not, I don't want to make myself into something that doesn't work for me, and accepting that it's okay to be lots of different things. And people find it it's the people outside who find it more complicated than the person inside who's reworking their personality.
Because where are they going to hang out in the evenings if you're not party girl? That's inconvenient, isn't it? I've done it with my daughter as well. Like, she's amazing with animals. She's like the animal whisperer and the child whisperer. They all sort of flock to her. And so we've talked about that loads. And it's a lovely thing. And I said, well, you could explore that later in your life if you want to, and do all these different things. And she's like, yeah, I'm also really good at English, and I could do that and that. And I'm like, okay, and backed off immediately. Okay, I've labeled
because then you notice it. And that's the great thing, because you're aware of it. And so I think what we need to do as parents is just be aware that when we try and say things to our kids, and it's all coming from a well-meaning space, we're thinking, oh, what career can they have? What, you're great at this, you can do this. Back off a bit. Yeah. And if you get that feedback, say, okay, sorry, what I've done is I've boxed you in there.
You're also that.
You're also that.
All these different things, and you might be something completely different next week. Go for it.
Yes. And it's okay to experiment. You don't have to be anything in particular. Don't let other people. And it's a really interesting one, because there's a case of a young man who went on YouTube because he was interested in getting followers, and he played his instrument and got no interest whatsoever.
He was a classical string player, wasn't he?
Classical string player.
We're really interesting,
I bet you were his one follower, weren't you? And then he decided, okay, that's not working. And so he started eating things with people watching. What do you want me to eat? And people suddenly started watching him and goading him.
He was amazing at his instrument.
Exactly. And they were goading him and saying, try eating this. Oh, can you eat too much? And he's ended up being extremely obese, and his personality has completely changed, and he's quite offensive and unpleasant, obviously entertaining to people. But what's really interesting about it is that our personalities can morph. We get feedback from people, and if it's a feedback pushing someone in one direction when they have a personality, an identity that's not really settled yet, it can be quite negative. So it's always giving our teens this feedback, their home environment, we have some control. We can give them positive feedback about the things that they're doing as a human being. Just what is it about you as a human being that I love? And just always, I love you. I just love you. I love you, whatever you are.
And personality is an interesting one as well, isn't it? Because we used to think that personality was just something you were born with, and that's the end. But now we know that, or there's research that that's not how it works.
It evolves,
and it's actually your personality can be a response to something traumatic that's happened in your life earlier. So the good girl could be just a response to something bad that's happened, that you felt you had to be this particular way as a child, and that evolves and stays as a habit for years and years and years. But that's not actually how you were born.
Interesting.
So it's a much more fluid thing.
Yes. And again, with our social media environment, we should really recognize that can actually play a role with our teens. Yeah. So if we want to help our teens who may be struggling a little with this, once again, it's feeding back that they're loved and they're important for who they are, not any particular role that they're playing for us. Modeling healthy attitudes towards our own identity. So, yes, I'm a mother, but I'm so many other things.
Yeah.
And being able to demonstrate to your teen that actually it's okay to not want to try and be one person.
Yeah.
That trying out different roles can be a good thing.
And that you're comfortable in your own skin. I think that's a really, really amazing lesson to teach our kids.
Avoid making comparisons between teens or your children, because as we've heard, it can be quite destructive, or
and
at least
really easy to do, because we love categories, and you're the funny one, you're the bright one, you're the and none of it's set in stone.
None of it's set in stone. Yeah, if it doesn't work, if you try this outfit on or you try this style of being a person and it doesn't work, fine, try something. Yes, because that was the other thing. I got this sense that my kids felt that once they had been a certain way, that they really were being inconsistent if they weren't that way. And I said, well, if they confront you about it, or if you even talk to people about it, just say, I'm a teenager, I'm supposed to change.
Yeah.
This is my job. I'm supposed to be trying out this stuff. And I say, when I had a whole group of girls around a table the other day, I just said, girls, experiment, try things, try different clothes. Do what it's great. I love that you've all got different styles, because it's harder when you're older.
Yeah. And it's the response that they get that is the tricky bit, isn't it? It's our response, and we don't like change.
We don't like change. So just to wrap it up, I think we can really help our teens by telling them how identity works, and that spending time figuring it out is healthy and normal. And coming back to signs that they don't feel a strong identity. For example, if your teen is obsessed with designer clothes, you can tell them that you totally understand why it's important and why they feel the need to belong. Then tell them what other qualities you see in them, and maybe reinforce that they are so much more than just that image, and talk about the downside of trapping yourself as being just one type of person. Susie, have you read Philip Pullman's trilogy, His Dark Materials?
No.
So good. I actually played it in the car to the girls over many, many, many car journeys going in and out of school, and they both listened agape. And the reason I mention it is it's a 3-part book, and it's fantasy. But each human in the book has something called a demon, which is a physical manifestation of the person's soul, and it takes on the form of an animal that you can see. So I can see your demon. Yeah. Or anyone's demon. And it's a constant companion which reflects your inner self and your emotions. It can offer you advice and provide comfort. And it's a kind of part of your identity. And in childhood, they shapeshift. So a child's demon might be a bird one minute, then a snake, and then a fox.
Oh, wow.
Constantly changing.
Yeah.
When they become an adult, their demon settles into a single animal form, and that represents their true character. Wow. And there was a great bit in the book where this man was hoping he was going to be a lion, and he turned out to be a mouse or something. And the disappointment that was involved in that. And I just thought, gosh, that's so interesting. And it sort of really sums up this inner voice that we have, and this sense that when we're children, we could be like, oh, I could be this and I could be that. And actually as teenagers, there's an awful lot of identity shifting. Yes. Right? Yeah. And I just loved it because it kind of gives a voice to that. Yeah.
Now we put it in animal form. It's
isn't it interesting? I think just think it's a lovely concept, and there's a nice way of being able to put it outside ourselves and saying, imagine, and what demon would you be? Right. So I have 2 bonus daughters, 2 teens. I've been through all this identity development, and it hasn't finished.
No. Well, I'm still changing mine.
30. Yeah, I'm still figuring out more who I am. Good. You see, this is the point. Yeah. It is actually, but it's quite a big stage in the teen years, isn't it?
And they start when they become teenagers, they don't really, there's no awareness of any of that, is there? So it's like, I just am. And then suddenly, oh, who am I?
It's not the same for all kids.
No.
For some kids, it's quite a dramatic change, and it keeps changing. So I remember my bonus daughters when they were teenagers wearing clothes that horrified me, and I wasn't their mum, so I had to sort of look on and think, oh no. And one of them went through a really big emo stage, which is that kind of depressing music and lots of black makeup and glaring at people, and and they both wear huge amounts of makeup. And all these, and I looked on being horrified. I'm not proud of it. I was just, because I didn't know. I was just looking at it going, yes, and I read about it and realised that it was just their mask, and they were trying on things. Yeah. But I think when you're not tuned into it, it's just terrifying.
Yeah, and teenagers get such a bad reputation because of that, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. So to what extent have you seen a shift in your kids when they change schools, because yours have changed from senior school then to college.
Yeah.
You've had one go to university. Have you seen much of a change?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually. Have I seen much of a change? Yes. Yes, there's changes, definitely changes, and also constants. So it's like the constants become bigger. Like it's almost like they flower. Who they were before was smaller. They've all become bigger.
Oh, I like that.
In that they are more sort of in themselves. So even though they're sort of trying out maybe different things,
yes,
they haven't sort of tried massively different trends in like on the external, I wouldn't say, but internally they've definitely developing, definitely. My eldest who's gone to uni, definitely that. Who they're mates with, I think, is always interesting. Like my eldest seems to be always drawn to the international students. Like he's really curious about the different ethnicities and likes that. And then that actually affects his identity. He seems, we have to remind him that he's not from Sri Lanka, or he's not from. Even though that would be very cool and lovely, yes. He's actually not.
It's actually so funny.
Yeah, but it's funny. But yeah, he's probably more fluid than the others with his identity. But but again, he's kind of got bigger. He's still himself. He's just got bigger, and maybe it's almost like an enemy type thing. You see an enemy, and feelers going out to different places, and you kind of try something out, don't you? And then you pull it back, or you.
Yeah.
My younger two, they're the same, but maybe to lesser an extent. They've kept their same friendship groups pretty much, which I think has a difference. Yes. But yeah, you can see it.
I think that's actually a big thing. If they've got the same friendship groups, and there's a continuum there, isn't there? Yeah,
but they're pulling in new ones, and they look a bit different, and they it's a really, really interesting one, because what is identity anyway? Like, what is it? Is it it's not just our external, obviously, but it's our sense of self, isn't it? We talked about that last time. It's our sense of self. How solid is that? Do you feel comfortable in your own skin, like we talked about last time?
Yeah, and I think that it will vary quite dramatically with different kids. Yeah. And I've seen big changes.
Have you?
I've seen big changes, yes. And I think that's because one of my kids she's very studious.
Yeah.
So you can imagine who that is. And she was I think she got perceived as being the nerdy person and didn't want that as her persona, but you get stuck.
Yes.
And I think as she's grown older, she suddenly realised that she'll go away to camp and suddenly she's super popular and everybody sees her in a different way. And it's a bit of a shock for her.
Yeah.
Because she's calling me going, Mummy, I'm really everyone likes me. And it's because it's a mismatch with what she'd been told by her environment.
Yeah.
And she won't mind me saying this, she actually ended up in a relationship with a girl, and it just migrated into that because I could see that she'd met her and they were talking all the time, texting all the time. And I said to her, this feels like something different. It doesn't feel like just a friendship. And she was a bit kind of, I don't know. And I just said to her, just so you know, I have no, I've got no judgment. I don't really care who you spend time with, who you fall in love with, as long as you're loved and you're cherished and it's healthy for you.
Yes, exactly.
And it evolved into a relationship, and it was the most beautiful, loving, all that sort of stuff. And it's really interesting because at that point, there started the questions, is she gay? And we didn't do that. We just went, well, and I said, do you want to have a label for it? Or, and she said, no, I don't.
No.
She said, I just think I fall in love with the person.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I thought it was a really interesting thing because, again, quite often we really feel like we need a box for things and we want to say, oh, yes, so you're bi or you're gay, whatever. And actually, since that relationship has ended, she's now interested in dating boys. And I just think I'm so glad that we allowed the whole thing to just blossom and
be fluid.
Yes. And it's all been incredibly healthy, but that was just a moment in time for her.
Yeah, because otherwise she'd have had to go, oh, now I'm not, make a big announcement.
That's the thing. So these big, I am now this, and making big announcements in some ways it's about wanting to be important and noticed. And so you can actually look at it and say, what's beneath this? Is this as important? Is this because you want people to notice you?
Yeah.
And sometimes it is that. But actually, I think it's so important to just go, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a difference, isn't there? And they massively overlap. But, you know, we have a social identity, don't we?
Yes.
That's the external, but it's also connected to ourselves, of course. But it's like, how do you appear? And that shifts and changes. And then there's your personal identity. How do you see yourself? How do you feel about yourself? And they do overlap, but they are also separate.
Yes.
And social identity, as we've banged on about a lot, is just super important for teenagers. It's their capital, isn't it? It's like, how do you perceive me? And if you have a social identity based on a poor personal identity or a weak one, then your social identity is suddenly super important and really vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you're very aware of what people are thinking of you and how they're judging you. And do I fit in? Do I belong? That big, sense of belonging as a teenager, which is all part of identity. But if your personal identity is intact and you feel really good about yourself and everyone, you feel loved and seen and all of that, then you can play around more with your social identity.
Yes, I love that. And that's a really good summary of how important this own personal identity is. And if you've got a child who's really struggling socially, and they're sort of desperately trying to fit in somewhere, we can build up their internal identity and how we see them and try and work on that rather than, because sometimes the friendships just don't click. Sometimes they're not in them.
And you can almost tell, can't you, if somebody dresses in an extreme way, whatever that is, there's a difference, isn't there, between, you can just sense they're doing it to get attention. Yeah. Because they need attention, and there's no judgment in that. There's something, they need the attention for a valid reason, and it's something painful that they need to, need to heal somehow. Or they're doing it because they think it's fun and they're loud and creative and weird. There's a difference. There's a comfort in that, isn't it? It feels comfortable, whereas the other one is a bit like, oh, not sure about this.
Yes.
They're different.
And I also wanted to talk about one of my other daughters, because this is to do with the online environment. And what I found really interesting is this is the one who's left school and she's working and she now wants to go back to study. Yeah. So there's been a big shift.
Yes, there must be for her.
And she said to me, this is one of the best things I've ever done. I've stepped away from the whole school environment, the other people who I was socializing with, and doing, the way the school was set up, because the school setup wasn't working for her. Nothing wrong with the school, just wasn't working for her. Yeah. And she's had a chance to work alongside adults, people of different ages, and just really think about what her priorities are. Yes. And
Amazing
it's been, and meeting people who are different and being able to pick. And the one reason I want to mention online is she has, how we say, show me your 5 best friends and I'll tell you what kind of person you're going to be. She's picked 2 people online. One of them is a med student who, what she does online is she does study sprints. So, because she has to do so much studying. So what she does is she has a YouTube channel, I think it's YouTube, or I think it is, or TikTok or something, where she literally says, right, I'm going to study at this amount of time, and we're going to start now. And she'll talk about this studying experience, and she'll have her camera on her the whole time. And my daughter does the same thing. She puts the camera on and she studies alongside this girl.
Wow.
Because she admires this girl. She said, I think she's amazing. Yeah. How interesting is that?
How have they found each other?
My daughter just found her, and and I don't know, this is the point. So what's interesting is I want to say this because it's a really positive thing. So she has found someone online that so her sister is like that already, but that's not the one.
No.
She wanted to find someone herself, right? So she's found someone online who really inspires her, and she does study sprints with her, and then she'll stop and she said, right, we're both on a break for 20 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm going back. And she films the whole thing so that she can show herself. Yes. So number 1, really positive. Number 2, there's a guy called Dean something, and she shows me him all the time. She shared him with me. And he's a young man who is a Democrat, and he basically makes his money being on TikTok, debating Trump supporters or anybody. He says, debate me. Yeah. And she loves it. And she spends the day at work going, I can't wait for the next debate. I'm going to watch him. And she said, I've learned so much from it. And she said, he's given me faith that there are men out there who are really lovely. A young man. And again, and I thought, But you see what I'm saying? So I think we've got this sense that online is so toxic and so horrible. And I think what she's done is she says to me, I don't understand it, because if you look at mine, it's all funny cat videos and I think it can be really, really dark and toxic, but it can also be incredibly
super positive. Yeah.
Yes, and she couldn't access those people in her immediate environment.
Amazing.
And wanting to talk to those people or wanting to follow those people wasn't cool.
No.
At the school she was at.
No, that's amazing. And the fact that she stepped out of school, I mean, for her identity, that must be big, because, you know,
it's huge.
As school kids, you know, you don't remember before you went to school, do you? That is your, and there's the part of identity, which is role. We have roles, don't we? They become part of our identity if we're not careful, but they're not who we are. They're our roles.
There are roles.
So being a school kid or a college kid is a role that becomes your identity. So if you suddenly stop doing that, then she's had to consciously or unconsciously think, well, who am I then?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And she's told me quite often, I feel like my prefrontal cortex is developing. But here's another one.
Your daughter.
And this is here's another one that really interested me. I've been reading a book which I recommend, and it's called How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. Mm-hmm. And the man who wrote it, I forget his name right now, but he said what was really interesting was in lockdown, a lot of gamers were fine. Mm-hmm. And he said the reason for that is people in gaming communities have friends who are gamers, and those people are separate from other things in their life. So if you have a break, and he said, I've had breaks in my life where I've gone from school to college to university to, he fell off the cliff and, he dropped out and then came back again. But he said, throughout all of that, the gamer friends have stayed.
Yes, I can see that.
Right? Because it's a different relationship. Yeah. And that also is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can totally see that. Healthy gaming book sounds good. I need to read that. A bit late for me, but maybe never too late. But yeah, no, I recognise that the gaming, like the gaming community is a constant.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. Then it's part of your identity if you want it to be, isn't it?
Yeah. What's also interesting is one of my bonus daughters, since she left university and went to work, the people she was hanging out with at school and at university, there were times when I thought, interesting choice of friend. I'm not sure that I'm that keen, but I welcomed them into my home. We took them on holiday, all this stuff. And it was so interesting watching them evolve as individuals and the relationship they had with their parents and how they've turned out. And there's one particular person, he has not evolved. He's not grown as a character. And I can see her now saying, like, that relationship isn't working anymore for me. She was living this life, this fun life and wild. And she's like, but he hasn't grown up. He hasn't changed. His identity hasn't changed and grown. It's stuck. And he's now at work getting blind drunk, falling over out of cabs and things. And he's in his mid-20s. So it continues. It continues to evolve.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that in
the falling out of
my
cabs.
Old age. Not the falling out of cabs, no. But that we change at different rates, don't we? And we develop, and when as you get older, so you look around and sometimes you think, gosh, they seem much older than me. Like, when did that happen? Or they seem younger. It changes, but for teenagers, it's so concentrated in those few years, isn't it? But the sense of self is always at the root of all of it.
But I also think, I've said this to my girls time and time again when they've said to me, how do you know you're with the right person? And I said, it's easy to fall in love. The hardest thing is to be with someone who continues to grow with you.
Yes.
And that's just something that you just have to keep talking and growing together.
That's
and it's
so true.
It's really challenging.
And growing in a way that is the same way, or not necessarily the same way, but one that's compatible.
Yeah, where you can, Anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't have much else to say. Do you have anything more?
Do I have anything profound and interesting? No.
Or stupid?
I have plenty of that, but I won't bore you with those bits.
Right. Well, if you have any more comments about identity, questions about your own teenager's identity and how it's developing and whether we can do anything to help, let us know. It's teenagersuntangled@gmail.com.
I have just thought of something.
Tell me.
I had a conversation with my two younger ones, and we gave feedback to each other as to how we saw each other. It was so interesting. So me and my daughter, we're very happy to discuss stuff like that. And my son was happy to listen. He didn't offer as much as we did, but that's very much identity, how we see you. And I think that also opens up the can of, we don't have one identity. Like
No.
it's a perspective,
Yes.
isn't it? It's
100%.
how I see myself isn't how you see me, and all of that, and all, you know, a million things that we try on. But that was a really, I can recommend that. That was a really fun game. But being really, we have an honest, you know, we have an honest culture at home anyway, but, you know, giving actual feedback. This is how, when you do that, that's how I do it. This is how I see you. And it was super interesting.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
And yes,
Brutal.
you know what it's made me think of is it's made me think of a friend of mine telling me about a party she'd had where there was a massive group of friends and they decided to play a game where one person had to stand up and behave in a way that everybody else would recognise as someone in that room.
Wow.
Yeah, it didn't go down
you have
well.
to have safe space for
It did
that.
not go down well.
No.
I listened to it and went, woo!
Yeah, you have to be super careful, and you have to have built up a really safe space
Exactly.
first.
So family where you all
Yeah,
feel
we could
connected
say
and
things
happy.
to each other like, "Oh,
Yes.
you're, you know, you don't like conflict," or "This is how you," and yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Rather than, "No, I don't know." Good game.
No, I love that. Brilliant tip.
Yeah.
Brilliant tip. So if you want to, if you found this useful, please send it to at least one other person. You could like and review. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
that would be amazing.
Yes,
it's actually the only really useful way of marketing, because I don't,
Yes.
you know, when people are searching on the podcasts, that's one of the ways they find the podcast, other than the fact it was in the Times newspaper recently as one of the top parenting podcasts, and then in the Week magazine.
Someone sent me that the other day.
Yes, I know. People are sending me, and I just say, "Oh, I didn't know. No idea. No one's told me." Anyway, thank you very much for keeping your eyes and ears open and letting me know about these things. And if you want to contact Susie.
www.amindful-life.co.uk.
That's the really stable way of getting hold of her. She is on social media, but she's really good. She kind of pops in and off. Not that,
But
I like
website
that.
is
healthy.
Is where I
Yes, and she's open to questions about anything, whether it's corporate or individual.
Yes, absolutely.
Mindfulness.
Or anything else.
Or anything else.
I
Just
might
chatting. That's it for now. Big hug and have a great week.
Yeah, goodbye for now.